not responding?
I don't know. I haven't been on it.
I thought I responded.
In fact, I don't think I've been on it since that day.
New Facebook, and then confirm by contact, physical contact. That'll work.
Are there any questions, any thoughts or concerns from anything in the week? That anyone might have had? Amen.
I was thinking about this. I hadn't been here in a while, so I don't know what we were teaching on. But it is just so many deaths now. And it's people, with me, it's people that I know, or I know, like, family member, like, a friend of mine lost her husband last week, rather. They buried her husband last week. And it's just been several, myself and my family. Does that have anything to do with the year?
With the year
2012?
2012?
Yeah.
Well,
I asked Pastor the same question because he said he would think about it. Because yes, you're right. I mean, since like November.
Oh yes, November.
There have been so many deaths that I personally know of. Either I know the person or I know the person who was affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
so
like-
many as within,
I could
Those
probably
are
name
saying-
30.
but are we saying in terms of us who attend here, or are we talking about?
Yeah, just general, in general. Community.
Yeah,
Job.
community, family, or whatever.
yeah.
We're not even talking about outside, you know, way out there.
Right.
Well, you're talking about for those that are here.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But I'm saying, yeah, I agree. Because, I mean, but in that span of time, this is the first time in my life I've known that many people to die.
I'd have to agree with that. I might know one or two in a year span time, but it does seem like a lot. No, I'm just joking. No, not that one.
so Ms. Bessie just brought up, yes.
Huh?
Yes. So Ms. Bessie just brought up the question about since and Ms. Audrey, since about November of last year, the abnormal high number of deaths that have been occurring, either with people that are known or people that we know being affected by a death close to them.
Oh yeah.
And the relationship was that with 2012.
I think that there's a readjustment in terms of energy, a shift, and with the paradigm shift and the realigning of the energy, that these people who transitioned are doing it for a reason of balance. What we don't realize, I think, is that when people transition, they leave a residue of their being. And the whole idea of transition is if you're holding on to what you call the earthly things or material things, or if you have been a person who didn't care much about dealing with other people in a righteous manner, then you have contaminated your aura, your chakra, whatever you want to call it. And when you transition, that has to be corrected as you pass through the light. And those things that are being corrected as they pass through the light are making more visible to us the things that need to be corrected. That is one of the reasons I think that you have complete diametrics when it comes to right and wrong. You can see the viciousness of the people who don't care about other people, are greedy, but you can also see the enlightened ones who are concerned. And
like both of those two polar opposites will become more and more apparent, like that middle ground ceases to exist.
yes, and I think that we've only begun to see the tip of the iceberg. I believe that the polar opposites are going to become more apparent in the very near future. What I mean by that is after December 21st, especially leading up to it, the paradigm that's shifting is not just a paradigm for enlightenment. Those who don't get it are going to be more vicious than they ever been, and those who recognize the shift in terms of enlightenment are going to not be defensive, but are going to be more compassionate in bringing about a paradigm shift with those others. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I think that we did a lot to bring that to fruition in terms of the things we did over the last few days. So I don't know. I see so much now. I was thinking the other day about them talking about the polar shifts, right? And I don't see a when they talk about the everything turned upside down. I see that happening, but not in the way that is being projected. The projection of it is that the North Pole will, the poles will reverse. But when the Mayan prophets saw that in that vision that people were coming, what he said was that gods would come from across the sea, and there would be an upheaval for a period, and then there would be peace and prosperity. Well, the upheaval took place, and everything was turned upside down in terms of whether or not, in terms of beliefs in being connected with or being one with nature, cosmos, God, how do you want to term that? So I see a shift taking place again, but this time it will be a reestablishment or an awareness of our being one with, as it was during that period of time. If you can look at the energy fields as it comes out of the North Pole, goes into outer space, and
for security purposes, this call has been terminated. Please contact your moderator and verify the time and date of your conference call.
Can you see that? If you can see that, then look at how it comes up around and goes back in, right? It looks like the lobes of the brain.
Yes.
The magnetic field?
Yeah, the way it's shaped. Looks like the lobes of the brain, and the earth would be the pineal gland.
What's being described for those on the video is a shape like this, and then it wraps back into the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's what the shift is going to entail, us being able to see with the third eye, to see the oneness that we are, as opposed to thinking that we're disconnected. So the number of deaths that we have seen, I believe has a direct connection to all of that. That was something else that I wanted to touch on as it relates to I know what it is. I had an epiphany. You know what that word means? I had an epiphany the other day, and it dawned on me that we may not even be doing this education thing we want to do at schools. Because that's not what's important. The most important thing is making people aware of who they are.
Which is true education anyway, which
Right.
is experience, not just learning something intellectual.
Right. Religion is intellectual.
Because it's void of that experience of self.
Right. See, when you start talking about spiritual things, if you don't experience it, you don't know anything about it. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as knowing a spiritual event from an objective position.
From afar.
Yeah. It has to be an experience. Because if it's not an experience for Audrey, then it doesn't exist for Audrey.
She has no relationship.
It has no relationship whatsoever.
Part of her.
Right. So the question is, how do I get her to experience it? If she has a desire, but how do I get her to experience it? How does Barbara get you to experience it, or anyone for that matter?
Same way, but from a deeper standpoint, that we experience this world, which is through our five senses. The only difference is you go beyond just your five senses, and you experience everything that is through your pineal gland, through your intuition, and things of that nature.
How do we get people there?
You have to make it personal.
Yeah.
You know, you have to make it personal for Barbara or whoever the subject person is, that this is what you're dealing with, and I see what you're dealing with. I see, you know, and once you can get them to see that this person has taken an interest in me, it's a personal thing, you know, and that way they open up to you. It has to be personal, because experiencing, you're talking about intimacy, you're talking about making yourself vulnerable, you know, and that takes a real heavy trust.
That might be the thing that we said earlier, but Audrey brought it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I mean, because you have to, remember when we talked about to know something, you have to know the opposite to actually have an understanding of what it is. So, for example, when people look at darkness or something that is being bad or whatever, it's almost like that is a measuring stick. You cannot know or understand something without knowing and understanding the opposite. So, with our interactions with others as well, when you make yourself vulnerable to other people, you have an opportunity to experience yourself and get to know yourself better. So that's one way. Another way is to become aware, to look within instead of trying to find yourself
I read this morning on the news feed. It comes to my phone that this guy who organized American Values has shifted his position about homosexual marriages. And of course he's been attacked vehemently by those who are in his group that he organized. But he said that when he thought about it, it's all in the sense of fairness. But then this other guy who is a preacher said, I'm a student of history. And I know that anytime marriage changes for heterosexual, it changes for everyone. And I thought about those two positions. The guy who started the organization, whose opinion changed, experienced something. The guy who challenged him has experienced absolutely nothing.
But he's going out with something intellectually.
Well, he doesn't, not even that. Because if he were a student of history, then he would know that he used the words Christianity in terms of talking about marriage, right? If he were a student of history, he would know that there's nothing Christian about this nation. Even in the classical sense of a Christian description, he would know that. So the paradigm is already shifting in terms of no gray areas. It's already shifting to a place where you are either here or there. And I say that for lack of better comparison. You are either a seeker or you are closed-minded. And I believe that when we deal with seeking from the earthly perspective, let me explain it this way maybe. We talk about 7 chakras, but then when you get to Peru and other places, south of this country, of course, you begin, and the hope is, you begin to see that they believe there are actually 9. But when you deal with the 7, you get to the place where you can see the spiritual essence in the earth. When you get to the 8th, you no longer seek, because you become what you've sought. And the 9th is Ein Sof, or the light of everything, which projects to you and through you everything that we are supposed to be. So it's like being in a room with a light. I tell you what, you remember the guy was talking about the flashlight on the rack? Everything around that light beam, you can't see it. But everything that light is focused on, you can see it. So when you get to that place, you become that flashlight for mankind. Your essence shows up everything that needs to be dealt with. Can you see that? But it's not a thing that you find, that you seek. It's something that finds you. The very thing that I sought to apprehend, apprehended me. Can you see that picture? So I believe that we're at a place where we must stop trying to enter this place of enlightenment based upon the Hopis, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, none of that. Because that's not our culture. Every one of them did it based on that culture. And the Incas saw the sun. Some of the Native Americans saw the eagle. And we see the essence of the prophet Jesus. You see what I'm talking about? So it's a cultural thing. But regardless of whether it's an eagle, the sun itself, or Yeshua, Jesus, all of them meet at the same place. And the place where all of it meets is at that place of the eighth chakra, the light, the essence of our being. And I think it's done that way on purpose, so that we will come to the understanding that Buddha was not a Buddhist, and that Christ was not a Christian. You see what I'm talking about? So what we did, we took the essence of their enlightenment and labeled it. That's what we did. And when we labeled the essence of the enlightenment, we put it in a box. Can you see that? So now we have to see things from the perspective of our culture, whatever that is, and not label it, but at the same time respect the labels that other people have put on what they believe. And by respecting it, it gives you opportunity to shine the light on the rat that's in their lives that's causing them to be in bondage. Does that make sense? What is it?
So you're talking about culture in terms of a religious upbringing?
Yes. Yes. When I say culture, of course, I'm talking about, the reason I say religious upbringing is because we have the most divisive religious upbringing of any religion anyway. When you look at Islam, divisive, Christianity, divisive, Judaism, divisive, but look at the spiritual leaders in all the other, the other earlier cult, Mayans, Incas. There were no subdivisions there. This is the thing that's fascinating to me. As I read concerning the Mayans, as I read concerning the Mayans, this is what I found. Not Mayans, the Incas. When they talk about a shaman, if it is Joe, when they talk to him, they call him Joe. But when they make reference to him as a shaman, he's she. The shaman is she. It's female. It's feminine. And I thought that was fascinating.
Sufi just means just is from Sophia, which is just wisdom. Which
Feminine.
is always also feminine.
You see? So, what are we saying?
Sufi and Sophia and the feminine is that experience, though. It's not the intellectual part. So we're saying, basically saying the key to wisdom and the key to true understanding or knowledge or whatever is through experience.
So doesn't that make sense, though? If you look at the feminine energy source as understanding comes through experience. The experience is what shapes us. And that's what understanding does. In the womb, wisdom in the womb of understanding is shaped. And so our experiences are what gives us spiritual shaping, in a sense. That makes sense. Does it?
Yeah, it does. It molds us. Yeah. I'm seeing the feminine in that the reason you're a shaman is because you allow yourself to become impregnated. Because if you don't, you have nothing to give. There's no deliverance.
But then if you're impregnated, then you're beginning to experience something.
Yes.
Once you become impregnated.
And that's the shift. That's the change. That's the molding. Because a woman's body changes. Hormones change. So there's a tremendous change in your experience. I don't know whether anyone else this week has experienced it, but I felt truly different after we got back, I felt when I surveyed the whole experience, I'm a different man. And I was talking with Kathy during the week, and I said that I feel different. And she said to me, the person who got on the plane to go to Philadelphia is not the person who came back. So I feel like we have become the elders of enlightenment, in that the elders will come together and decide what kind of world they wanted to create for future generations. And I feel like that's the position we're in. And when we debriefed in the airport, I feel like the decision for what kind of world we want to see was made. It was not just for Philly as we thought, but it was for the world because of what we were in terms of City Hall and the expansiveness of what Philadelphia represented, world power, when it was the capital.
I guess then what I'm hearing and what's being described is there is no, you mentioned understanding from a cultural perspective, and maybe that's the whole problem that has put everybody in a box. Because from a cultural perspective, we try to manipulate it. And what you're describing is what has taken place the last few years as well as what has taken place over the last week. Is nobody trying to shape it. And when you allow things to just be, you are opening yourself up to be male or female, whatever is needed. Whatever is needed to communicate with someone or make them experience what you're seeing or what they need. You don't care what you become. And maybe you can't do that always culturally, because that's what religion does. So what you're describing then is being whatever is needed to be, whenever you need to be it. And that is no culture. We're every man's culture. We're redefining the cultures.
I am. The onion. So suppose then that all the energy is feminine in the earth. And it must desire intercourse with the energy out from the other dimension. Suppose it actually says, in the beginning, suppose it says, beginning created God, right? Comma, heaven, comma, earth. Suppose Elohim did not create heaven and earth. Suppose heaven and earth came from the beginning just like Elohim did.
How does that make a difference?
The difference,
or a big difference.
The difference would be that Elohim is not the creator of the earth, but Elohim belongs to the earth just as we do, and heaven. He belongs to both, heaven and earth.
That to me is easier seen if you don't think of it in physical terms when you talk about heaven and earth.
Right, and I'm not talking about it, of course, in physical terms. Because see, what made me think about that is this. Heaven and earth, male, female. Elohim, both energies. Heaven, earth. Earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. Because that's where we came from, Adama. And the Adam was molded from the Adama, the ground, the dust of the ground. The womb of the earth is opened when we transition to receive that part that we leave in. And the womb is closed. Can you see that? So the physical thing that we do to bury someone is a spiritual representation of the seed that comes from what we call heaven, enlightenment, into what we call Israel, the earth realm, in order to impregnate it with enlightenment so that the light can be birthed through those who are seeking light.
So is that what they talk about death being the beginning? If you're seeding the dead, that which came from light into earth to bring in light.
Yes, ma'am. It's like one writer said, you have no will you to be born and you die against your will. But when you get to the place where you can see that living is what we call dying, then you don't die against your will. It is your will to be dead already in terms of your relationship to what the natural world has to offer. Because if you look at, be it the Sufi dude, yeah, be it Rumi or Jesus or whomever, the first thing that they did was disassociate themselves with the natural world. That's when enlightenment really began to open up for them.
I'm laughing because you just named all the different cultures, because that original shaman,
Mm-hmm.
they do believe that we just came to Earth and Earth was already created. And then Tibetan lamas and the Tibetan Book of the Dead actually teaches where they actually do the opposite. So when a child is born, they mourn, and when someone dies, they celebrate.
But did we not grow up hearing it? I know I did. That you're supposed to cry when someone is born and celebrate when they transition or when they die. I grew up hearing that. But it didn't make sense to me then.
We didn't experience it. We did hear it say it, but no one did it. No one practiced it.
I mean, because we all were taught what to believe in. Like you said, we didn't experience anything. We just went throughout our lives and what we were taught to think and associated certain labels onto these events.
If you look at the death processes of different cultures, if you look at it from the Incas or the Aztecs, you see they close chakras when somebody died. When you look at it from the Jewish or the Christian, you sit with them with a pleasant attitude.
That goes too with Jesus saying right before his death, "Why have you forsaken me?" Well, that's what we were taught. Then we find out he was like, "No, so this is what my mission is, as in I'm accepting it, I'm ready for it."
As it with Judas, he sent him on a mission, as opposed to him being a traitor. He sent him on a mission. Huh?
Can't be both.
No.
Can't be a traitor and part of the political order.
So you've been bamboozled.
Bamboozled me once. Shame on you. Bamboozled me twice. Bamboozled. I've been bamboozled. Y'all don't know. That man there with it. So what you teaching today?
I was just sitting over
I just sitting back here, the barber guy here.
I'll tell you what I got out of this so far.
Okay, well, I was waiting for y'all.
What is red? I have my experience of what red is. I see this thing, and somebody else comes along and sees this thing, and they say, "Well, that's red." So, okay, that looks like it's red to me. So if I see something similar, I say, "Well, that's red." But they'll come in and say, "No, that's purple." and across cultures, trying to take that which is inside of you and personal to you and find a common language where this will translate and you can agree that for red, this is the path we should take in our life. This is what happens after we die. This is who we are. It's who I am is heavily influenced by my culture, and so the difficult part is being able to find avenues of empathy across the barriers of culture. Because when somebody says we bow to an eagle, I've already got my set idea, and I gotta find a way or decide to, or not to, put that aside in order to understand from their perspective.
Excellent point. Because what happens is in Western culture, immediately when I say eagle or sun, they assume that they're bowing to it, and they really aren't. They're recognizing it as a representative of something greater than them. And that's not what they're surrendering to, that's not what they're worshiping. It is the great spirit that brought all of us into being that they actually worship. If you look at it, from the way, from their perspective, it is no different. Bowing to an eagle is no different than bowing to a man, Jesus. It's no different. Bowing to an eagle is no different than bowing to a cross. It's no different than protecting the communion table. All of it is idolatry in terms of how we define idolatry. As a matter of fact, all the idolatry of the Ten Commandments is a spiritual thing, as opposed to a wooden carving or represented by an animal or a person.
What I was thinking about, if all these different avenues get you to the same spot, because what's most likely going to happen is because you're coming from a totally different culture, the language is different. So because the language is different, conceptually it would be very hard for someone to understand exactly the experiences or exactly define what that other person is experiencing with that eagle or with that sun. So really you cannot put labels on it at all.
Labels come from disassociating yourself with the Creator. Because there was a time when man did not have religion. And religion has not always been in the earth, neither has religion always been necessary. Religion only became necessary when we began to disassociate ourselves from the Creator. Because religion is that reconnection. So if you already have that connection, you're aware of that connection, then you don't need religion. You are the spirituality that so many others are seeking.
Until you want to pasteurize, until you want to bring it out to somebody else, then you got to find something that can be shared.
Well, the way they shared it was not through, not in a Bible preachy thingy type thing. The way they shared it was that the spiritual elders or the spiritual person in the village was the one who guided everyone. Everything was filtered through that person, as opposed to the concept of this connection. It was seen that everyone in this room is connected to the Creator. All of us are one with the Creator. However, there is one appointed or chosen by the Creator to be a continuous reminder of that. And as long as you respect that leadership, then the opportunity for all of us to become the enlightenment that we seek is always there.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to label it. It is your way of life, as opposed to being a part of your life.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, Pastor. You said something about all the energy in the earth. Supposed it was a supposition that it was all feminine. That's I guess that's pretty interesting to me. Maybe we deluded ourselves to the point where we only allow ourselves to be masculine or feminine, and that brings no life because you don't let anything else in. Nothing flows. There's no rhythm in the earth anymore. I was looking at something on television. It was talking about bees, right? If that queen dies and there's nobody to take her place, there are bees that in that colony that will become female, and it's more than one. They'll become female, and they'll choose from that, from those females, which one is going to be the queen. So, but it's done in harmony. The whole colony sees the survival of the colony that this has to take place. And I guess I'm saying that to say, if I only see Ron as being a masculine male, and I only allow a female to come with me with intercourse, then how much growth is that? There's nothing that I'm experiencing. There's no life coming from that. So if the feminine energy is the dominant force in there, until man realizes that, we're going to remain stagnant. We're going to remain fragmented and have 4,000 religions in the world. There has to be some that's really willing to change the colony.
And
Does that make sense?
What you've done is described the ancients' way of keeping the tribe connected to the Creator. The shaman being she, even though it's a he. I believe that, that if you can take the queen bee and let that be representative of spiritual leadership, right? If I am the cover and I refuse to see myself as being feminine, then I don't receive anything to feed those who I cover. Can you see that?
You feel like you got to give all the time.
Right.
And if you don't have it being replaced, you make it up.
You make it up.
You make it up. Now, if I transition, then it doesn't matter because there are other people who become female. And if you can see those people who become female around that table, then a choice is made as to who will be the covering. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter whether it's Audrey or Barbara, they still have to recognize that they are female, not in the sense of physical, biological organs and etc., but in the sense of spiritual energy. If Barb only sees herself as a physical female, she still doesn't receive anything. She's limited herself to receiving only things from the physical perspective. But if she opens herself up and sees that now I am masculine, as in terms of when I give the seed, but I'm female when I'm receiving the seed. Can you see that? So we have to transcend the thought pattern, or we have to have a complete paradigm shift when it comes to understanding how we experience things. And I purposely stayed away from describe, but how we experience things. Because the descriptions elude us when it comes to the spiritual.
And that's what experiences do. Experiences make it where you don't have to have those labels.
What made me begin looking at all of this again was I wanted to know, you've heard me ask this question many times, how is it that the ancients were able to map the universe? Well, I wanted to know. So I started, reading a lot of stuff and doing a lot of research trying to find out. It is said that they traveled the light threads that connected them, that they saw as connected them to the light or the ultimate light. And they were able to become one with. Therefore, they could see that they had a clear view of the whole universe. But this is what shocked me. When I began to read the different cycles that the Mayans mapped, one of them was the rotation of the core of the earth. The core of the earth rotates 1 degree faster than the earth itself. And I'm like, okay, I definitely need to know how they found out this kind of stuff. So that's when I began to see how, begin to find the writings of them following the threads of light and realizing that they are not in the universe is in them. And being able to see all of these things, and the written history was left so that we would not remain ignorant. I would not have you ignorant, brethren, unaware that you have this power, this ability also. Once you become aware that this is available to you, I don't know about anyone else, but I think, if not all, most people in this room want to know, okay, if it's available, how do I access it? What do I do to get this back? That kind of thing. Then you find out you don't get it back. You just become aware of this is there. So. You have a question on it?
I was going to go back to the male-female thing. I finally read the Gospel of Thomas in its entirety last night.
Wow.
I know it took a while, but the last verse talks about that, where Simon Peter said, "Make Mary leave us, because she's female. Females don't preserve life." And then Jesus said, "Look, I will guide her to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every female who makes himself male will enter the domain of heaven." Which I read a lot of this last night going, what? I think it was interesting. I was going to ask, why didn't he talk about the males becoming females? But then I also just realized he was talking to males at the time.
I do know they had a big problem with Mary, and he was very close with Mary, and a lot of his understanding and awareness came through his interactions with Mary. They were kind of jealous. I'm not sure if in that verse he was just basically trying to get them to realize and to look at her as being equal or not. There's another verse that speaks about that. I'm not sure if it was in Thomas, if it was one of the other hidden gospels or not. There was another verse that speaks upon the disciples and Mary as well.
The perpetuator of that jealousy was Peter, primarily. Go ahead, say it. That's it. That's it. The head of the Catholic Church, the first quote-unquote pope, would challenge that. And Joe, you know it's a coincidence that he was chosen.
It's just a coincidence.
Yes.
That's all. Of course. All the priests were men.
Because we don't use the Book of Thomas in the Catholic Church. So.
So why did he say that she he would
Make her,
make her male.
I have cast.
because she had to be a receiver also. I mean, she had to be a giver rather.
She's the one, the main one who continued to spread awareness and spread the gospel, if you will, after he transitioned.
And that is what he meant by making her male?
Say what?
That's what he meant by making her male, because
Yes.
she became a giver after that.
Yeah,
In other
she's
words,
the
you have
principal.
something to give too.
Yeah, she's the
Yeah.
principal one that actually took his place more so than any of the other disciples.
When she said, he said, I will guide her to make her male, so she too may become a living spirit resembling you males.
So is that?
He's talking about the spiritual, you see?
So I'm saying, I was about to ask. So is that saying that as he was going through and interacting with her and becoming more aware of his feminine, his feminine side, becoming more aware of that? I mean, that's basically what was taking place with her, which would be the opposite anyway. When what Ron was talking about earlier today, that's what was taking place.
I wonder what Peter meant when he said Mary should leave us. Females are not worthy of life. When life comes from their womb.
I was wondering too, I just saw Yentl, I've never seen it before, but where it talked about how the Jewish culture, you know, the thought was that females don't get educated, they're not, I forgot how he put it, but in essence, spiritual, they were the world in that culture, they're the earth, and male is the spiritual. So you bring, the male is the spiritual life being, whereas the woman's the world. She's the earthly life being that brings, you know, people into the world, but not the spiritual life.
So evil.
Yeah, she's
No.
evil and dark.
No. So he was saying that she, so she was saying that he does not deserve, she's not worth a spiritual life. Is that what he was saying?
Like
From my understanding, he was saying that she wasn't worthy of that esoteric teaching. So the deeper understandings that Jesus was sharing with them, Peter and them were just not ignorant enough that she was a part of the source of that the same teachings too.
I'm stuck on the worthy part.
I think
What
he's
makes
coming
you
from a
worthy?
cultural perspective.
What's funny though,
He's coming from his own culture.
what I find funny is their culture came out of Egypt where that wasn't the case. So where did this ideal come from where we have to subjugate and oppress women to begin with?
In Hebrew, first place the word is used, it means to diminish, to make small. And it does say of no account, but it's talking about to be small, or 996, yeah, to be diminutive, to be least, quantity, to be younger. So for that, you know, I'm too wondering what he meant by worthy. I guess that doesn't shed any light on it, but maybe he's saying that no male will listen to you, no matter what you have. Who are you going to give it to? What are you going to do with this? Because there's nobody that you can give this to. It's of no value.
Or maybe he was talking about she's not worthy to enter the kingdom. Because when Jesus responded, he said, last part that was, for every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. You see, of enlightenment. So where he says she should leave us, could this have been based upon cultural values? Because the rabbis
Yeah.
did not allow females into certain parts of the temple. And to this day, there is a division in Orthodox Judaism, even in the synagogue, where males and females sit. So could it be that this should be seen as one of the seeds that resulted in the suppression of the female? Because regardless of how you look at it, especially in the religions that were influenced by Judaism, the females are suppressed.
Yeah.
More so than any other religion, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, primarily. You see, where females are suppressed. Even to this day, it doesn't matter whether she is quote unquote a licensed preacher, she's not welcome in pulpits. So it's, and the funny thing about it is that if you go back to Leviticus, you began to see that a great part of that suppression came as a result of her menstrual cycle. Neither. Because a woman was considered to be unclean. So you couldn't even be in her presence if you were a male during her menstrual cycle. So this might border heresy. But I challenge many of the things that are literally accepted in the whole Levitican code because of that.
Could that be an instance where, maybe the writers or whoever got that code got the light but shaped it the wrong way, with a bias or a slant?
I think very much so. In the way that they did adultery. You remember when we really looked at that and found what it, So I'm thinking that the adversarial energy, the dark energy, made that decision, or helped shape that light. Now, mind you, I do believe it was necessary. I do believe that. Because there has always had to be a struggle to fight through in order for free will to exist. So I do believe that it was necessary, but I do challenge a lot of those the Levitical codes. And I challenge even whether or not most of them were even followed. I mean, who stoned the child to death for disrespecting them? Because that's one.
What child wouldn't be stoned to death?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some women being stoned.
That was an excuse.
Yeah, the wrong guy got stoned.
I do think that we pushed off from the bank. We're in the river. There's no going back. There's no refuge. There's no place, no islands in the river. We got to go through the rapids, so let me deal with it. I believe that when we look at any culture's book of spirituality or holiness, we have to look at it through the eyes of the people who wrote it. And when we begin to do that, we begin to find that there are biases in the book, regardless of which one it is. Whether it be the Tibetan Book of the Dead or whether it be the Bible. I think we need to look at it with an open mind. Because if we don't, then we're going to end up condemning and not condemning. In other words, we're going to end up confused because there are things there, if we look at them literally, they don't make sense. So why'd you bring it up? Why'd you?
All of them, they
Yeah, okay.
Which means to even understand directly what they're saying, you have to understand every colloquial thing about that culture and their language as well.
Well,
You have to have an immense understanding of their entire culture, their belief system.
Jesus challenged it by virtue of him hanging around females or having females with him. He challenged it by virtue of the woman at the well. He had no business talking to her, based upon the culture of the day. So I think the challenge was not, well, I'm going to talk to Ranger despite what society says. I think the challenge was, you need to recognize that femininity in this earth realm is indicative of spiritual energy, which is feminine. And you cannot move. If you can't have life on earth without a male and female, you can't have life in the other realm without male and female. Because as above, so is below. So that intimacy must be recognized. I mean, look at male and female, Isha. Both of them are fire. And you take one letter out, and both of them become fire, as opposed to the compassion, the fire being converted to compassion for each other.
But if you could, if man understood that energy and the value of it, think of how it would have or could have been manipulated. Maybe it's being preserved in the earth. The understanding of it is being preserved until now, for that reason. So somebody will want and desire understanding to use it for its intent, to bring about life and enlightenment in the earth. If not, this is a powerful thing. What you're saying is you can control anything from the weather to life and death.
Well, Jesus proved it.
Yeah. So maybe that's the reason why we put boundaries around ourselves, and because if I think that I'm dominant, I don't want you to be my equal anyway. I'm gonna do what I can to suppress you if I don't see the value in us working together.
You know what I'm saying, Ron?
What's that?
I was going through my head when Barbara was talking about the Ten Commandments last week. You don't find the suppression of females anywhere in there. You only find it when man began to explain and add to them. Focus 613 commandments, and those 10 don't suppress anyone. As a matter of fact, they open everyone up. Thou shalt have no other God before me. You should not have Elohim. Don't bring another Elohim before in my face. In other words, don't declare yourself to be something spiritual that you're not. Does that make sense? See, and that lines up with, I say you're gods.
I'm thinking now, because I remember when Barbara was reading them last week, and we didn't have time to go in there, I don't remember what we discussed before, but he even goes in to say, don't try to covet your neighbor's male ass and even the female ass. And I wondered why he made the difference there in that particular verse. Because nowhere else in there does it say anything about male or female.
It would be interesting to know which words are used for male and female too.
Yeah.
we, can't remember. Oh, when Barbara said, engraving images, and she made the statement to dig out, but I think we got diverted into something else, and then explore that. In order for you to engrave something, you have to remove something. And if it's engraved in your heart, then those things that shouldn't be there are removed.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
The other thing I thought about when engraving is that's laborsome. That takes some time and thought and effort. You know, so you're talking about experiencing. That's you're experiencing the wrong thing. You're putting too much thought and too much of yourself into the wrong thing. Because that takes sacrifice to do that.
So I was looking at the Shema, and I was Hear Israel, the Lord our God is one. Javeh, when I look at that, I'm looking at the explanation of the others. The last one said to bend and to inflict desire. You see that? So if you don't allow the light, if you don't allow the Father to shape your desire, then who's the one that's shaping it? If you are the one who's shaping it, and you cannot avoid shaping it based upon your experiences. But if you allow the Father to shape your desires, then what you begin to see is something totally different than what you expected. And that's where the whole idea of heresy comes in. Anything that you don't agree with is heresy. As opposed to exploring to see where it is rooted in Scripture. We just dismiss it because we don't believe that it's supposed to be what we are saying it is, because we weren't taught that. And I'm beginning to see that most of what we were taught is not there anyway. Because if you go into a place, a congregation, and you start talking about light, energy, and don't say spirit, that's an issue. When light and energy and spirit, light and energy are the same, but spirit is different. And most people don't understand when they're saying edify your sister, edify your brother, edify each other. They're saying energize. Release energy towards them. That's what he's saying. And the whole idea of being guided or of being comforted by the Spirit, it says that he said, the Paracletos, the Spirit to comfort us, did it not? That's what the Scripture says. So how do you get comfort from the Spirit? How do you get comfort from the breath? How do you get comfort from breathing? By breathing and recognizing the reason you're breathing. Can you see that? Because think about it. When we see people all excited, one thing we say is take a deep breath. Or when you're on the phone with someone and they just talking, you say, hey, breathe. So the principles are engraved in our essence, but we don't necessarily know how to make application of them, because we have been taught that the Holy Spirit is somebody out there that you receive by the laying on of hands, and then you go speak in tongues, and that's the evidence of the Holy Spirit. Now, and I do, granted, I know what the Scriptures say concerning that. Believe you me, I know. But at the same time, we make the Holy Spirit be something that it isn't, because the word holy does not separate me from someone who doesn't believe what I believe. It's not supposed to anyway, because if God breathed the breath of life into everyone, right? And they became a living soul, right? Then everybody holy, they just don't know it. Everybody's been separated for enlightenment. Everybody has, you see what I'm talking about? Everybody has been given the opportunity to be, to come to the realization that they have been enlightened.
So is that why it says, there was another verse, and this is in the Bible too, but it's in Thomas, whoever blasphemes against the Father will be forgiven, and whoever blasphemes against the Son will be forgiven. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either on earth or in heaven. So since the Holy Spirit is us,
Blasphemy is cutting yourself away from
The soul, yeah, power.
from the source. So if you choose to do that, that's like cutting yourself away from what the essence of your life.
That's denying your own existence.
That's like, just like putting a plastic bag over your head.
It's not a punishment, but if you can't walk because you cut your legs off, it's not because you're being punished for cutting your legs off.
You just can't walk.
You just can't walk.
Yeah.
But getting back to the whole and the separation, and from what I understand, I think I see this different than I ever have before. What you're being separated from that is your own selfish thoughts. Does not mean you're separated from people or their actions or anything like that. You're being separated from yourself.
Yeah, going against any of the 10 commandments is actually separating you from yourself. So you may be inflicting harm on to others as well, but all of those things is denying who you are and cutting yourself off from the all. In every last one of them. So we view them sometimes as we're doing this to someone outside of us or another, etc. But that example we just gave about, Joe just gave about cutting off your legs.
Yeah.
You're cutting off your legs from yourself. You're cutting off that connection. So if you were to say someone is punishment, or if there's a punishment, you are punishing yourself. That's the only person who's punishing you. It's choosing to be cut off. And to go back, Pastor, what you was just speaking about as far as that energy, that light, etc. So basically that energy and that light is just, or telling someone to breathe. In all those cases I see acknowledgement, because when you tell someone to breathe, it is so they can experience that breath, which gives them life, for them to be to recognize that. And when you give someone any type of attention, you are giving them light as well. So even just giving someone something light, you are acknowledging it.
So
It's the same thing, which of course you wouldn't want to happen, but a child that is being reared, it's better for that child to have what we would call a horrible parent. It's better off with a horrible parent than it is with no parent at all.
how you figure that?
Because that child that has no particular parent whatsoever will not survive.
Oh, you talking about from birth?
Yeah, I mean at birth. The same thing with the experiment they did, which was, I was going to say inhumane, but they're not necessarily humans, but with the monkeys, with setting it up, providing the baby monkeys with everything they need as far as like milk, etc., but just the wire mother, and that
what I'm seeing that I have not seen
What's that?
in the Ten Commandment? It talks about what you should not do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't offer punishment. Punishment doesn't come to Leviticus explaining. So I'm convinced that everything that happened to us is chastisement, not punishment. It's correction. There's absolutely nothing that happens to us that's designed to be punishment. It's correction. A child should be spanked for correction, not punishment.
It's all rehabilitation.
Because punishment has a very negative connotation.
Because it's almost like under the eyes of revenge with punishment. That's how our penal system works. It has nothing to do with correction. It has to do with revenge.
We've discussed this before from a different perspective. Being in bondage those 400 years, if you, from an immature perspective, you see it as punishment. A child gets spanked. If baby goes to put his hand in that plug and you pop his hand, he sees it as punishment because he's immature. He doesn't see that you're saving his life. You see? So it is based on your perspective, you see it as punishment.
And the head of it is that the child sees it as punishment from you.
But you did it for correction.
For correction.
But we see that as punishment from God. Slavery.
Yeah.
We see it as punishment from God. If God is so righteous and just, why did he allow that to happen to us?
Immaturity.
I mean, did they? Because if you saw this punishment from God, why continue to preach it?
I'm talking about us. I'm not talking about the slaves themselves. The slaves themselves saw the evilness of the perpetrators. But I'm talking about when we, when we start talking about Kemet and start talking about the nationalism, black nationalism, that's where it comes, this whole idea of punishment. Mm-hmm. Why would you, I remember, back in the 60s, it was always, why would you pray to a white man's God who allowed this to happen to you? You see?
That's so riddled with.
I know. Yeah, but that was the attitude, and still is with any number of people. So they live in a different world than the world that was intended for us to live in. Because if you look at the slaves, they themselves began to look to God for deliverance. Mm-hmm. And in actuality, they forgave the slave masters. And when they were forgiving the slave masters by Virginia, they were forgiving themselves for creating the God that enslaved them.
They were forgiving themselves for creating the God that enslaved them.
That enslaved them, yes.
The God they were worshiping, or the white devil?
Yeah.
Yeah, the white God that was created.
The one they created.
Yeah, out of their desire for a God, trying to find light on their own terms, and it manifested in that way. And the very light that they were seeking apprehended them. So you're going to be apprehended by what you seek, whether it's positive or negative. Yeah. You're going to become it. The strongest thing that you have is your desire.
Joe brings up an interesting point, though.
Sure, don't say that.
That child puts his hand and then you pop the hand. All of a sudden, the power of love in the mother, whoever popped him, becomes his savior. So even though he's angry for being popped, that's when he comes through for comfort. You know, he's gonna come back to that, even though you just popped him. he's in pain, and he's even frustrated, but that's who he comes to for his comfort. You know, he recognizes that, even at that age.
Now let's look back at the slave. His children goes to that God still. For comfort, for deliverance, he wants to be like that God. He wants to emulate that God because he sees the wealth of that God, materially, of course.
And acceptance.
Yes.
A sense of acceptance.
See, it takes more courage for you to deny who you are than it does for you to accept who you are. See, when you get past wanting to be accepted, want to be liked, want to care what people think about you, is at that point that you can begin to be aware of who you are. It takes courage to lie to yourself. And then what it takes courage to deny that you are light. It takes courage to be human when you're not supposed to be human.
It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, a lot of it. When if you just stop and breathe and recognize that you're Elohim,
It's very easy.
you're like, okay, here we are. Yeah, because you're constantly battling. You're constantly battling to justify things that don't make sense. I mean, look at what he says. Human being human. It's difficult to be human as opposed to being Elohim, because now I don't have to labor for anything because I'm seeking the kingdom and the righteousness, and all these things come to me. I draw these things because of who I am. I don't have to look for earthly beings to survive. But those things need me because I'm their creator. They have to have me to survive. So they look for me. But we've done the reverse. We have grown into a religious church culture that look for money. You know? That look for things. What was it, last week before last, $34 went to jail for him and his daughter?
For doing what?
Him and his daughter were fighting. And she called the police on him. She was like 15 years old, wanted to go to a party at 11 o'clock at night. He said, no way, and he ended up with the altercation. Well, I didn't look at the altercation. What I looked at was, this didn't start when she was 15. Something happened when she was 15 months. When I first started pastoring, I stood in the pulpit and said, when my kids out of school, I'm off. You'll see me on Sunday, but no Wednesdays, and I will not be coming for anything that's not an emergency. I refuse to be like most pastors are, lose my kids and save yours. So when I looked at that, that's the first thing that popped in my mind. When she needed him, he was in a Coliseum trying to get some money. Now that she's grown with established desires, not grown but older, with established desires, rooted in what she wants to do, it's too late to change that. So what happens? She rebels. And the rebellion is not against so much of God as it is a rebellion out of anger for you not being there. Makes all the difference in the world. And so I wasn't, because see, when you look at the fighting or the altercation, whatever happened, when you look at that, that's an end result. The question is what caused it. That's the effect. So what caused this thing? And the cause was not a party. It was long before the party.
Because that was my thought, Pastor. She left that time of night before to go do what she wanted to do when he wasn't home, probably. She used to doing what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
Well, what do you say about the children whose parents are there and they starting this rebellion things? It's a phase is what I
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but when each one of them got 14, I said, okay, one of them is 13. You going through this now, every little thing you do, the stuff I used to tell you, stop. I'm going to beat your butt. every little thing you do. And I got tired of it, but they didn't know it. By the time they got 16, they were straight. One of them
But
was
is
straight.
it at that point, that's just a phase they going
It's
through?
not a-
I don't remember going through that.
It's
I was thinking the same
But
thing.
see, the reason you don't remember going through that is because you were not exposed to what they're exposed to. They are exposed to rebellion constantly. Look at BET. Look at MTV. Look at the programs on TV.
Disney.
Look at, yeah. I mean, they are constantly exposed to rebellion. I mean, you know, you see what I'm saying? So they, right. You know,
Different times,
I mean, well, if you, I remember when we were little boy, if you thought about rebelling, you had to do it. You thought about it. You get that look. You say, oh my God.
We already tried
Yeah,
that.
you know.
Well, I think we're dealing with a different generation that has a purpose that requires that strength of will. And like I know Jamila's talked about this before, but like we're that bridge to help them shape that and push it in the right direction. But I imagine it's going to be really, really hard because they have the will to get things done.
But still, again, the reason they are, their will is going in the direction it is because exposure to rebellion is shaping their will.
Yeah, it's not organized.
It is the quote unquote church doesn't have anything to offer that will shape their will, because the church doesn't know where it's going. It's on its way to heaven. Like the lady said this morning. Like the lady said this morning, she said that my friend Shirley Clark was a filmmaker, and she died. And she said, she said, I wish she had got these accolades before she died. I just hope she can see us from heaven. Now I have to believe in heaven because I have to believe she's there. So before she died, you didn't believe in heaven. Yeah. So, and that's what the church is. Yeah. If you believe that life begins at death, then why is there such a fight and a fear
To stay here.
to stay here? If you believe it's a better place. Because if I were to tell you that across the street is a mansion and a PIN number for a bank account with $35 million in it, but if you stay over here, you can't eat. You don't want to cross the street. You don't want to cross the street. So if it's better, why are you not fighting to get there? Because they don't believe that is better. They think the comforts are right here. They don't believe it's better. So, Janice, we have to begin to shape that wheel. And I think that one of the ambassadors for the shaping of that wheel is Nick. Nicholas. I believe that he is one of the ambassadors for shaping that wheel. I believe that I see him as the end of a funnel. And us being the funnel, that we're filtering through that funnel, and the mindset of that generation has a different energy than we have. So he has to take the light that we are able to deal with and transform it into that energy that becomes familiar to them, so that they can accept it. Does that make sense?
Diana has something to say.
Yes, I've been trying to hold that thought right there. It's going back to when you were making the statement, we were talking about enslavement and captivity of the God that we created.
But you walked right into what was my question. Well, it wasn't a question, it was observation. The God that we created, and it was dealing with the church now. Because everything is that the God that we created is a God that, I don't use the word pimping, but that's pretty much what it is. Pimping out is a God of things. I worship God for what I will get from Him, the blessings, what we call blessings, the bigger house, the better job, more money, abundance, the ministry of abundance. And then you walk right in it with the $2 thing. Because the average one is like the church that we have created, where we're in 24/7, and the ministries that we created, and all these ministries we created to place the kids in, which is keeping the so-called pastor away from the family. And by the abundance of what you call blessing that God has given you, you're giving the kids more things, but you're not giving the kids what they need. That crying out for your attention, that crying out from the nurturing, from the mother. Because if both of us are in the pulpit saying we're pastor and co-pastor, who's nurturing? The seed that I put in, that I said God told me to put in, because that's my only purpose. I'm supposed to be fruitful and multiply. Who's nurturing? Who's being there? We substitute parent with Xbox, and all these other things that money can buy, that we say our God that we created, blessed us with. The child has no other choice but to be blessed. And then we say, well, I blessed them, I'm in a position now I give them more than I had when I was coming up. We ain't had a lot, but we had love, we had nurturing, we had a whole neighborhood that nurtured. Kids now have things. More people are in what they call homes, American gifts, but you don't see anybody out in the yard enjoying that which they say God has blessed them with, and they working all day, all night to hold on to. Nobody's out in the yard enjoying anything. No, I'm not talking about this week. I'm talking about period, even when it's not hot, 24/7. I have neighbors that I know, kids, the only time I see them is when they're at the bus stop in the morning making noise. Other than that, you don't see nobody in yards. Parents, kids, nobody but a dog.
Their yard now is the internet. Their yard has just gotten bigger. Their yard is the internet.
And honestly, that's the culture we're talking, that Janice was making reference to. That's the energy that we have to deal with. If we don't shape it and allow it to shape itself, that's where obesity comes from.
But it's not just the kids' internet, because you got the parents on the internet 24/7 more than the kids. So it's like everybody's in the house on the internet on games.
So all the kids on the internet, because the parents are kids. I'm serious.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I was going to say, what Sheldon said, a child will die if he doesn't have his parents. And we said, oh, well, you're talking about babies. Maybe we're not just talking about babies. Maybe we are talking about even as they grow. Because they don't have that a parent's there to guide and set those boundaries till they can learn and manage and widen those boundaries. So for me, it seems like if they have this will and it's the next ball of energy or expansion of energy, they just don't have that guidance. So they can, maybe that's why we're dying in another way. And in the sense that they're not getting the guidance they need.
So, are we yet seeing a division, or are we seeing a world created to make us unaware of division? When you're on the internet, when you're on the internet, you're just connected to people, but you're connected to people. So there is an illusion of connectivity, as opposed to what we call real connectivity, right? Suppose that is representative of the illusion of connectivity that we think we have with each other. When I say we, I'm not talking about people in this room. I'm talking about we when I was in the traditional church setting, right? We were identified as whatever the name of that church is. And we had an illusion that that's who we were. Let's say the church was St. Luke. We had an illusion that all of us are members of St. Luke. And each individual member makes up the whole of St. Luke, right? So we had an illusion that we were St. Luke. But if you really think that we were St. Luke, come into a church meeting and see the divisions. Or come into an auxiliary meeting. Or say something about somebody's hat being ugly. Or
Sit in their seat.
yeah, you see what I'm talking about? So there's an illusion. So maybe the whole thing is something of an illusion that we created. The illusion is just it's just being perfected. The illusion of being connected is just being perfected. Because now we think that we are connected with people all over the world because we can access them through our internet. So, what does that internet, what does it represent spiritually?
Sophisticated disconnection.
I believe, but I believe the connectivity of it represents what we are supposed to be aware of. And what we're supposed to be aware of is our connectivity doesn't come through social interaction, nor does it come through an internet, but it comes through spiritual awareness. Now, we don't see with our eyes. The eye is what? Is a sensor that allows the light to come through, and the optic nerve is the cable, and the visual cortex is the processor, the image maker. So, suppose for a moment that we were able to direct the energy or the light from our pineal gland and from our heart, where the thoughts are, right? Directly to the visual cortex. Then we will be able to see how connected we are. That's the way we're supposed to see it. But the computer has become a mechanical representation of the eye, the optic nerve, and the visual cortex. Can you see that? So if we were able to do that, the visual cortex does not determine what it processes. It just processes whatever comes to it. It's no different than, most kids don't even know what it is to develop film. But it doesn't make any difference. If you put film in the fixer, it's going to process it. It's going to develop it. So the visual cortex doesn't care what you put in it. It's going to show you an image of what's there. So, and the image of what's there is not, it doesn't show me you sitting on that stool. What it shows me is light. And the light is formed in the visual cortex to let me see this. So if we can take the light, or if we can direct the light from the third eye, from the pineal gland to the visual cortex, then we are able to see everything that is. I believe, and call me crazy if you choose to, it's okay, I've been called worse. I believe that the way the Egyptians, the Mayans, and other people were able to map the universe is because they were able to see everything through the pineal gland being directing images to the visual cortex. And that's how they were able to reproduce it in an artistic manner.
So I guess my question is, how do you keep the distractions from looking so attractive? Because everybody has that same instinct in them that there's more to this thing called life, and I'm searching for something. But we start looking for pleasure. We start, as a culture, we start thinking we're missing something, and we make it materialism. So, or the internet, you know. But so, if that same desire is in everyone, how do you make those distractions? If people see that they're distractions and go after the right thing, because there has to be an internal thing that leads you there.
We go back to what we were talking about earlier. When you see, when you allow the pineal gland to project onto the visual cortex, you become light that shows up everything else. And that's when people begin to see that the material is not what's needed, or not what the thing is not going to change them.
I have noticed that too. A lot of people take interest with me, and they think I'm like a unique person or whatever with interacting with me. The only thing I think it is I think that I have more freely what they aspire to be or what they want to be, but they have been fighting and holding themselves to be. So once you just truly be yourself and just be, because you get a glimpse of yourself in other people, and they don't necessarily know what they're attracted to, and they can't put a word around it, or they don't know what it is, but that's what it actually is.
And that's more what I'm talking about. Where is the beacon that they see? You know, I mean, it's there. There's a hunger there, and some think, well, I am to pursue this or that, and as long as I'm pursuing something, it's filling the void, and momentarily it's satisfying. But how do you see? Where's the revelation that says?
Because I mean, let's even think about where that illusion came from in the first place. The illusion came in the first place with basically what he was talking about earlier today, is allowing or buying into something to say, yeah, this is what I want, this is what I want to seek, this is what I want to pursue, and just getting caught up in that.
See, I think we become the visual image of it when we began to accept one thing. The ones who we have been looking for is us. The one, you know, everyone is looking for Messiah. As long as you're looking for it, it never appears. You see?
Yeah.
We are the one. I do not believe for a moment that we were haphazardly brought together. I believe that we were brought together for the purposes of the paradigm shift that's taking place as we speak. And I just believe that we are the one that we've been looking for.
I think that's why religions have become so powerful, because they're in the business of looking and not finding.
Yeah.
And as long as they can keep you looking, they'll keep you coming back and you'll tell you to look for.
It's like the carrot, the horse and the carrot. You never find what you're looking for.
It was like that was a saying in churches a while ago, seeker friendly. It's a seeker friendly church. I remember going to one that called itself that. I was like, so when do you ever get past being a seeker? The church is seeker friendly.
When you start knocking and finding and buying the field and stuff, right? I mean, even the seeker finds when you see it from the perspective of the scriptures. Because once you are shown something, you're looking beyond that. Because there is always something else. And I say that hesitantly because I don't like the term, there's always more light available. I was sitting, breathing, and focusing, and requesting of the Father wisdom and integrity. That's it. And I began to see this royal purple, what appeared to be a blob. And when it disappeared, I saw what I recognized as hieroglyphics. And I began to ask, so how am I supposed to read this? And the response that came back to me was, you're it. You are to be read. Now what that means to me is, unless we are recognizing that we are the one we've been looking for, we do not become capable of interpreting what people see when they see us or when they hear us. So what I'm saying is that you are a poor interpreter if your desire is to let people know what you know, as opposed to helping them see. You understand what I'm saying? So if we are the ones, then we are hieroglyphics to them. That's what we are. And if you're going to read hieroglyphic, you have to be taught, or you have to learn. So they have to learn how to see what they see, or what it is. Even if you don't know what it is, they respect it. That's why people come to you for advice. That's why people unload on you, because they see something, not with the natural eyes, but they see something in that boy.
Ron didn't get it.
I thought he was a man. Anyway.
Is that their little running joke?
I was waiting on it. Oh, gosh.
So in that sense, the distractions really are a way of preserving you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most definitely. Most definitely. That's the protection that the Creator gave us. The ability to create distractions. The more distraction, the distractions that we have created are the very thing that has saved us from ourselves.
Well, there you go to the answer to the question of, is evil good for anything? Because that was one of the questions that came up.
Yeah, that. It's funny because from a material standpoint, our material beings, I think not ignorant, I think something like that, but it's part of the brain. It actually works very quickly without you thinking. So if you walk upon like a stick that's curved like a snake, you automatically jump back without even thinking this could be a snake. It just automatically happens. And that is a part of the brain that deals with fear, which is what was used through human development to survive and to save oneself. But at the same time, in the cortex, all human beings have, what we call empathy and stuff like that. But it's just that part of the brain processes very slowly. So it doesn't work as quick. So yes, that is equivalent to the ego having a particular purpose initially.
It's like this automatic stuff that we talked about. It helps you function on automatic. Like you're driving a car. You don't know how you got somewhere, but you got there. And if it weren't for the ego functioning on he stopped functioning automatic.
Now something else that, hold up. Okay. There's something else about that as far as dealing with fear. I'm not going to pronounce that part of the brain again. But how it works is it does not totally isolate and don't pay attention to the fear anymore till it sees that particular fear has ceased to exist. So from a standpoint of what's going on in today's society as far as the economy, etc., it hasn't been presented where the likelihood of there never being something dramatic is going to take place, or the entire idea that Americans have that they are not safe when actually North Americans are safer than they have ever been, but they don't perceive perceive it that way. So that's why there's still that fear.
Functioning in the fear
So
mode.
in that same way, with how the ego works, you really, really, really have to work to get past that. If not, it will still be functioning when it doesn't even really need to function anymore. And go ahead.
The whole idea of fear is designed for manipulation. You can control people if you keep them afraid. I remember Reb Hawkins told me, he said, if you hold a stick over a man's head and threaten to hit him, you get him to do far more than you would if you hit him with it. Because once you hit him with it, he's experienced it. So now you got hell on your hands to try to convince him to do anything. The idea of ego. The I is necessary. And this is one of the things that I wanted to address, that the ego is only bad through perception. That's how you deal with it. Because if the I is totally bad, then who's the I am? So it's all in whether or not you're using it for witchcraft, which is manipulation, or whether you use it for what? Help me somebody. What you lose it for enlightenment, or to travel the journey towards enlightenment. Why?
To empower someone.
Yes.
Awareness.
So
to be a servant to them.
Because I know that I was thinking, ego edging God out. I taught that before, and it can edge God out. It depends on how you deal with it. Because without the I, there's no you.
I think the same can be said for how you deal with the distractions of the world for your kids. Is how you respond to those distractions with your kids, what your perspective is. When I was a kid, I happened to come across a penthouse, and then I got caught.
Penthouse magazine.
Penthouse magazine.
Oh.
Penthouse magazine.
Man, Joe had a good childhood.
And it was actually the story. It was Penthouse Forums was called, and it was like the stories. It wasn't a lot of pictures, it was stories. I got caught, and I thought immediately, well, here comes the whooping. And it was my mom. But instead, it was an opportunity for her to have a discussion about what that kind of book meant and who we are in relationship to that book. And it opened my eyes to sexism and position of male ideals and values on females, and I wasn't expecting that at all. But talk about a distraction, and talk about how you contend with distractions. I found that the phrase is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And the more you stand for, the stronger you are to deal with the distractions that are around. But I think they have to be, your perspective on it has to be continually infused into the children as the distractions come along.
I wish my mom had been a sociologist.
She was sometimes.
You just got to beat She was in her own way.
My next life, she gonna be one.
All of us are envying you right now.
but though the distraction that he relates to is child's play in relationship to the distractions that we were making reference to with the other the generation now.
Mm-hmm.
because of the access that they have, you know, on the web. That's, you know, that's considered, it used to be called smut, but no more. It's purity now, comparatively speaking. So, and I think the reason we're so preoccupied with that, we meaning Western minds, are so preoccupied with that is because it has been taboo. Intercourse is not spoken of in the church, even though everybody engaging in it. If they're not, they're wishing they could. Sex is not discussed. Birth is not discussed. You see? So intimacy, intercourse is not discussed. I remember at my first church, I talked about having intercourse with the Spirit, and after I came at that pulpit, oh my God. Every man walked in there, they had a little deacon around me. And one of them, I said, you said in the pulpit, but he said the word. I said, I didn't say that. I said intercourse. And they explained what it meant. So you see how out of touch we are. And the thing that really baffles me about it, well, it should maybe, is that the very thing that brings us to the place of enlightenment is the thing that we treat as being dirty and nasty, as opposed to understanding the power and the ramifications of it. We treat it, and the very thing that we ought to treat that way, like naming and claiming, that's vulgar.
But that's part of that fear that we were talking about. But that's part of the fear I also look at connected with oppression, because it's done on purpose for you not to understand those types of things, for you to be ignorant about them. If you associate something with being vulgar and nasty and just everything negative, then to even experiment on a spiritual level in doing it will automatically seem bad, like you're doing something wrong.
Well, it's like one of the discussions we had, and I am so glad that the guy brought it up about the act. You know, because we don't look. What the biggest problem is not the thoughts; it's the act. You know, that's what the focus is. But there has to be something to take place prior to that.
To the act.
Yeah. So if you deal with what takes place prior to the act in the proper manner, then the act is done the way it's, you know, and the results of the act is what is designed to be the result, as opposed to you making the result be smoke the cigarette, going to sleep. But it's true.
I got you.
If you don't know the proper place for it, then if you don't smoke, then you make excuse or go to sleep. But if you know the proper place for it, then you know the energy that's released, and you don't shape it. You recognize one of the things that Jamila referenced to once is that there is a fluid that's in the male sperm that goes directly to the woman's brain when
We got you.
yeah, takes place. So that in itself says, if we deal with it properly, then the female will be more careful, and the male will also be more careful, because she doesn't want that fluid that's going to bring the attraction to her of someone she doesn't want to be bothered with or who mistreats her, and he doesn't want to influence someone who he simply is looking for as an object of pleasure.
That's why I really cannot stand how much credence is given on just plain rules, because it goes beyond rules. It should go and explain the thought when something should be done and not done, not just to say that something should never be done. Because every action is not necessarily negative always. really just don't care for everything just being rules and everything just being material.
I'll tell you one thing that I got, my last class. Someone was talking about, they made the statement that the first marriage was when the woman was presented to the man. And my response to that was no. And I asked myself, why did you say that? It just fell out my mouth. Like, I didn't, that part that brings you talking about what you don't think. That's that part. It just fell out. But guess what? When I began to explore, because you know if I said that, now I got to explore it, right? Marriage is created in the natural. When you talk about marriage, it's actually beyond, it doesn't talk about a man and a woman being joined together like we talk about it. It doesn't talk about that at all. So the way a man and woman join together like we talk about it is far into the scriptures. You ought to look up that word, marriage and married, and see where it's first mentioned. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we have so many issues. Because we don't understand that rather than a man and a woman coming together, that there are energies. That there's something greater than that that's taking place. But we only see visually what's in front of us. So I believe that, I know we don't have time to explore it today. At some point, maybe we need to explore this thing that's called marriage, so we can actually see that it's not, marriage is more of a possessive thing than it is a sense of freedom.
You mean how it's used in Western culture?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, of course.
And when you're talking about marriage, you just mean two people, not two people, but the connection of an ideal oneness or whatever you may call it, as in going down the same path.
Well, that's our concept of it. Yeah. Should be that, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not that.
It's not that. Our concept of it is
she or he belong to me. This is
very
mine.
Joe.
This is my property.
Joe,
I claim this right here.
And the first time it's mentioned is Exodus 21:10. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish.
Now touch marriage and see what it means.
I don't have that version.
Okay.
What version
Diane,
is that?
go ahead. What you gonna say?
Yeah, it's going back.
I don't want that to go back.
It's when he was talking and we got in the,
Joseph?
yeah, Joe, I'm sorry. About, his mother explaining, using that as an opportunity to explain a teaching tool. I think some of the conversations that I had this week, and especially with females and females that are in the church, I had a conversation with a mother the other day. It was like, talk about puberty. And I've come across a lot of women who don't want to talk to their children, especially females. I'm like, in this day of age, a child in middle school don't want to talk to them about puberty. Especially in the church, because that's going to lead to them going out and having sex. No, you need to explain this. And then I've had so many who say, well, my mama didn't talk to me. So, it was 2012. And look at you. I mean, and the church not addressing these issues, because not talking about it is not going to make a girl keep her dress down. That's a little talk. You keep your dress down. Back in the day, grandmama used to give us a long talk. Keep your dress down, your legs shut tight. And you tell him why you ain't telling my brother to keep his in his pants, because he out there sowing seeds. But not talking and then becoming women, not talking to your daughter. So you weren't talked to. You're not talking to your daughter. Now you're a grown woman. And I've had someone sitting there saying, well, they're in a relationship, they're in a marriage, 8, 9 years, no intimacy between the mate. Oh, we fine. We cool. It's all good. He in his room, I'm in my room. Don't you have, well, the Lord take care of them needs for me. Really? Really? The one that you serve take care.
I must be serving a different one then. You know, I mean, when I come, I just come straight like that. But we're okay. It's okay with, because, or either I'm past having kids, because that's what the marriage is supposed to be for, you know, be fruitful and multiply. Kids are grown. I'm going through menopause, so I don't need that now anyway. Really? You know, I mean, but we going to church on our way to heaven anyhow, waiting on the Lord so we can be raptured. But it's this whole non-communicating, this fear of talking about sex. And it's still in 2012, so child still was curious, want to know.
I wanted to know in 1956.
Did you? No. I mean, what is, you know, that's how we say we've evolved with Christianity and our walk with the Lord, but still the little simple things like that, still not communicating with your kids on that level. I wish it was a break, because I'm trying to hit them harder.
I'm just scared to make it known.
Yeah, I see it's an opportunity.
But you know, we have all these ministries in church to get kids in the church. You go, you know, continue, but those things that's so important with this thing that we call life in the circle, but we're not addressing those issues. We just dancing all around.
And on the heels of what Diane is saying, if we were to deal with it from a spiritual perspective, the rest of it would take care of itself. It would take care of itself. Because there is no way that you can truly accept who you are and then be intimate with just to satisfy your own lust. It's not going to happen. Because something about you, well, actually, you have a paradigm shift when it comes to that. So I think that rather than talk about it from the physical perspective, we need to delve into it more from the spiritual perspective. And when we do that, then I think we begin to transition towards the end, as opposed to, when I say that, I believe we're the ones we've been looking for, I've been waiting for. When we accept that, then we begin to deal with everything from a spiritual perspective. And once we do that, that's when Messianic consciousness began to permeate the macro, so that it can be picked up.
With you on that sincerity, because in leading into that, by not talking, and we have so many moms that are not doing, then the end all what they call solution is they're putting their daughters on birth control at such an early age. And everybody keeps saying these girls the pills that their body is not ready for is doing all these crazy things to them. And then, you know, cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, all these crazy things going on that kids at 13 are experiencing, you know, that they shouldn't be, because no one wants to communicate or do what, no one, the easy in all is go put her on birth control. That way if she go have sex with somebody, at least she's protected. But look at what it's doing health-wise to us as women, what we're doing to ourselves. You know, and a lot of these people are in somebody's church on Sunday, you know, but it's just everybody's dancing around the issue.
Working at the tap dance, 1801 Sunset Women's Center. Mm-hmm. We had a particular day clinic, all teens came in, and that was the solution, to put them on depo, put door plates in their arm and all kind of stuff.
I'm glad they're doing it. I'm ecstatic about them doing it. Okay. And the reason I am is because we don't do anything, we don't deal with anything until it becomes a problem. We don't. We don't deal with it. We don't even address it unless it affects us. See, I'm a firm believer that that nothing is wrong. Everything is an opportunity. And what helped me to see that even clearer, when we were in Philly, we went to where did we go? That place where we saw that little piece of paper.
Oh, the museum.
Yeah, we went to the museum and we saw the scrolls.
The Franklin Institute?
Yeah, yeah, right. And we were, and as we were standing there, well, I couldn't get the other word.
I dare you call that a little piece of paper.
But one of these translations there from that scroll was a translation that said, and he said that it was light, and the light separated from darkness. So, if light separated from darkness, then that means the light came out of the darkness. So that means that darkness is also light.
But the darkness part was in brackets. They said it wasn't necessarily there, like other translations said it was there. It just said the light was separated.
But it said, but see, the second part that said darkness. The top part was in brackets when it says that, and it says that, and the light was, that's right, the light was separated, and that's what it said. I got it now, girl. And the light was separated, and the light was called day, right? And the darkness called night. So if the light was separated, and the light was called daytime, and the darkness was called night, then that means that somewhere in the midst of light there is a night, there is darkness. And if you look at the word night from the Hebraic perspective, it's the same word that's used in Psalm 1 for night. That means to twist the truth away, or to twist the light away. So somewhere in the midst of enlightenment, there is something attempting to twist the light away from you. So in that regard, darkness is about creative confusion. Not creative, but creative confusion. As opposed to the light that shines itself, that shows up everything. And I believe that the concept of marriage, as we deal with it, as we see it, is that darkness, that night. And the light of it is what we're beginning to see from a spiritual perspective. Now, because when we look at it, the first mention of it is Exodus 21:10. It talks about conjugal rights, sex, intimacy.
There was one word, Genesis 34:9, which talked about contracts.
Contracts. That's shaton. Is that the same one for covenant? No, it's not.
That's the first one.
What's the root? Okay. I would like to see what else I was mentioned. Hey, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Look up marriage and see how many words are. Well, I got to. It's 2859. But I wonder how many words been translated as that.
You looking at blue letter?
Look at contract or covenant in the paper. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just caught up in this thing now about marriage. I really want to understand it because I believe that this is the key to changing everything because it births something, you know.
So Pastor, backing up into what we were talking about with the young kids in the birth control situation, and you were saying about
I like it.
you like that.
Yeah.
But am I understanding in what you're saying, you view that as that opportunity to address it. If it were not happening, we wouldn't be addressing it. See, it does something to the body, yes. I'm more concerned about what it does to you, not your body. What does it do to you emotionally? What does it do to you intimately? Not your body, you. How does it change who you are? You see what I'm talking about? Does it give you a sense of false security so that now you can be intimate with anyone you choose? As opposed to having some kind of relationship, when that takes place. Does it affect you in such a way that you get a sense of false security to the extent that you're not concerned about a relationship, you're simply concerned about pleasure? But the question mark comes when the young children I'm talking about aren't even old enough to, well, they old enough to make a decision, they make the decision, but not the decision to get on it.
You
The
talking about
parent,
under
the
16?
mother is,
Mothers are signing
they
for
gonna
kids
get
to
on
do
that
that.
stuff.
Right.
The kids like, I don't
Now,
get on.
and that is the same thing that the church is doing.
Mhm.
When it comes to discussing sex, they are abdicating their responsibility. And the parent is not caring about the child, it's about the parent.
Not having to take care
Yeah,
of
I don't want to have to deal with that. There's abdicated responsibility. How many kids, how many females have had an abortion in order to save the family name? You see what I'm talking about? It's not about the kid. It's all about what people gonna say. So again, we are not allowing ourselves or anyone else to be who they are. We are being who we expect it to be. Think about it this way. Homosexuality. When you talk to people whose children have come to them and told them that they're homosexual, especially people who are in church or affiliated with the church, they are not concerned about that child's feelings. They're concerned about what everybody else is going to say. How it makes them look. Their failure, whatever that is, as a parent. No baby is born with instructions on his butt. You know.
I hadn't seen mine.
I mean, so it's not. It's about what people expect from us, as if you're the one who let the people down and made your child homosexual. That's crazy. Now, rather than dealing with the real issue is not homosexuality. The real issue is how can I help this child adjust to what he just told me? That's the real issue. How can I help this child adjust to reaching puberty? How can I help them see the danger, in becoming intimate at this age? That's the real issue. But rather than search self and deal with the issues, it's easier to give them depo-barrel. Or it's easier with the homosexual child to say, you're no longer my child. I don't know you anymore. Or try to hide them. Don't come to the family reunion. Or you don't even get a letter to let you know they're going to have one because they don't want nobody to see you come but your partner. That's crazy. That's just like somebody in the community having an abortion and say, don't tell nobody. Hell, everybody in the community know it. Everybody know it. And most of the time, the people know your child is homosexual before you do. So these kinds of issues, nobody wants to talk about. They keep sweeping them under the rug, but now they're falling over because their heart is so big. And I do believe, Sheldon, that these are the things that we are compelled to talk about. Those controversial issues that no one else want to touch are the things that we have to deal with and deal with them regardless of how other people respond to us as a result of having dealt with them. We cannot allow that to bother us. Jesus had to get past what folk thought in order to do what he did. And every one of us have to do the same thing. It doesn't matter to me what people think as long as the thing that I am engaged in is going to benefit mankind. That's the litmus test. Is it going to benefit mankind?
Hard, difficult. We're social beings. We're measured every day by folks around us.
Every single day. And you're right, Joe, it is hard. It took me a long time to get to the point where I said, heck, it doesn't matter anymore. And what I found is, since I've gotten to that place where it doesn't matter anymore, I don't get invited, to the stage anymore. I don't get an opportunity to just give some remarks. I don't get that anymore. But guess what I do get? When I walk into the presence, I get people over in the corner saying, I read the scripture, what does that mean? I get them asking me, well, I'm dealing with da-da-da, can you help me? You see, I get those Nicodemus type questions. And you don't get those Nicodemus, people acting like Nicodemus until you get to the place where it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So we have to deal with controversial stuff. And Janice, that generation that we were talking about, they don't care. They don't care. Especially, I sat there and I listened at Nick talk. You don't never know what will come out of his mouth. And then some of the stuff he write, you be like, okay, give me 2 days. I'll figure out what it means. Because that's how they think. That's just how they think. Last thing. If Jesus was beneath the covering of John the Baptist, and we understand the nature of that, that in itself should be a humbling experience in our lives. Because there are people who deny that. But Jesus said, I must decrease. John said, I must decrease and you must increase. If John had to decrease, then he was saying, I'm at a place where you're not, boy. But when I baptize you, it's going to be on. Basically, that's what he was saying. We have to do the same thing with our kids. We must decrease and allow them to increase, not stifle them because we don't know what they're talking about or don't understand it. But that's what's happening. Just like we were misunderstood when we were young. Yep. Now I believe. Oh God. That's okay. Go on.
So you just finished like that?
You gonna leave me hanging like that?
Telling you. It's like a horrible
Tune
movie.
in. Next episode.
Next virtue.
So far.
I believe that we need to deal with everything. The talents, the abilities that they have, they cannot use them to make money. And they cannot use words that damage people in order to be successful.
What?
Because I see the same exact thing you're saying, because when you're talking about John decreasing, and we also talk about John as being a guide and being a teacher to him as well, it's twofold, because in that relationship you have a masculine and a feminine relationship. Jesus was being led, but at the same time he was also giving more free reign or being empowered, I would say. So this is like, okay, this is the direction that you go in. You're going in the direction for mankind. Now, once you head in that direction for mankind, I'm not telling you what to do. You do what your talents are, you do what you're moved to do, etc. Only thing I'm doing is I'm just heading you in the right direction, and then you just go from there. Whereas a lot of times that particular part is missed. What is actually given is just given the sense of direction, but at the same time it's trying to control. And you have to lead, but at the same time empower both simultaneously.
They go fall. If we had the patience of this child, we'd be great. How many times is this child going to fall before he learns to walk? He's patient enough to get up and try again. We don't have that kind of patience, and we try to justify everything. When I say that they should not use it to make money, if your primary objective is to make money, you will not be enlightened, and you will not enlighten anybody else. That's the bottom line.
Okay, but
and it's the equivalent of a charlatan as well. And then I'm coming back to you. The thing that we said in the hotel. If you come by a fellow man, your neighbor, and it is even worse when you look at that person as yourself, and that person is starving, or that person is about to die of thirst, would you charge that person to give them some food? You have some food, you have what is going to sustain their life. Would you charge that person to give them some water if they're about to die? Because that's the equivalent of what actually takes place every day.
I want him to expound on the last part, the talents being used to make money, because that's a big umbrella, so I need for you to just break it down. Because I could be thinking in the aspect of you saying, we'll say, I got a voice, I can sing, so I'm going to go out here, music is going to be my ministry, and I'm going to blow up and get paid. I mean.
Let me explain.
Okay.
It is intended to be a big umbrella because it is. I don't care what your talent is. My talent is oratory. I was making speeches years ago before I was preaching. And it was nothing for me to speak to thousands and get paid. I wasn't doing it to get paid. I was doing it because I was a Pan-African nationalist. And I was inspiring people to get in the streets and do what they do. Now, I don't do what I do because I get paid. Because if I were going to do what I do because I get paid, then I would be doing it here at Green Faith on Monday night, because it ain't enough. What I'm saying is this: I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter what your talent or ability is. Your objective, your intent, your purpose has to be for the enlightenment of mankind. If it's not enlightening mankind, then it is creating a negative aura for mankind. It appears to be light, but it is not light. And enlightenment is always dealing with something in a positive way that's going to enhance somebody's journey towards spirituality.
And this is the other thing. It becomes a balance, or becomes a certain line. If let's say you're a psychologist, and let's say you're charging me for help. Well, that relationship that the two of us have, all of a sudden, when that relationship is based upon money, it is totally changed, because are you really, really, really concerned about me, or are you concerned about that money in that particular situation? So is that connection then false, or is that connection then true?
I'll tell you a good example. It wasn't about enlightenment. Bill Gates had no intentions of getting rich. He didn't want to make a computer work. That's all he wanted to do, make a computer work. 99% of all the people who are financially stable or wealthy, they did not start out to become wealthy. They did what they liked doing. And what I'm saying is, we are in a period of enlightenment. We're in a period where enlightenment must be paramount. We don't have the luxury that we had a few years ago. Hit and miss. It must be for the purposes of enlightenment. It must benefit mankind in some way. It has to benefit mankind. If not, then we have drawn a line at intent.
I don't recall Jesus charging anyone.
Yeah, but they gave it.
I do want to be clear. Y'all aren't saying that people need to quit their jobs,
No.
or psychologists shouldn't charge, or
No.
Okay.
No, that is not what I said.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I'm not trying to be
I'm not talking about
morbid
you.
about it. I just want to make sure that
That is not.
that's not
I
what I'm
said
saying.
that regardless of what you do, your intent must be to enlighten mankind. Maybe I shouldn't use the word enhance mankind. Enhancement of mankind is not making him financially wealthy. Enhancement of Joe might be for Joe to lose a job and be homeless. That may be the only way he sees the light. So what enhances is not necessarily something that we look at as being positive. That's what I'm saying. If the primary objective is to make money, if that's your focus, then you have lost focus, because if that's your focus, you do whatever it takes. Rainy sings opera. There are some things she's just not going to sing. I mean, we cannot talk about intent until it comes to talents and abilities. Intent is always paramount. Always.
Independent of what the talent is.
Yes, it's just intent. Your life is lived with intent.
And that goes back to what you said earlier about good and bad or right or wrong. That's based on your intent. You don't make a bad turn.
Yeah. I mean, my purpose for being here today was I wanted to sense the energy from last week. That was my intent. Secondarily, I wanted to see the Parks family. You know, that's because I know that it may be sometime before again. So my intent, what does that do? I believe that it enhances because I need to touch the baby. You see where I'm coming from? I can't determine Janice's intent for building a website, but she can. If I ask her to build me a porn site, you go build it? How much money I pay you?
No.
I want to build it so I can get some advertising, so I can make some money. There are some things that you have to draw the line. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. In the moment that you put a price on what you would do that you would not do for nothing, you just sold yourself.
What you've been talking about the entire time, what we've been talking about is a distraction. Being distracted by trying to create wealth, money.
I came across a great book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And it's all about how you take every little moment and breathe value in life into that as something as menial as taking care of a motorcycle, you know, and bringing value and honor to everything you do without respect to what it is you do. And I know, you know, because I'm a singer too, and I know for me that money has nothing to do with why I do what I do, because if it did, I'd be messed up by now. But even just my day job, it's in the context of a union, and that union structure is built around parameters beyond being efficient, parameters beyond how to do the job in the best way possible. It's all about trying to make the most money for the workers, give them whatever it is they do. And I'm counterintuitive to that. I'm always trying to be, try to do the best job that I can do. And sometimes I come to a head with everybody around me.
Yeah, that's it.
You know,
and that's all I'm saying. You know, if you were not doing the best job that you could, regardless, if you were not efficient, then you would be lying to yourself about what you believe. Right. That's all I'm saying. Right. You just do, regardless, you just do the best that you are capable of doing. That's it. And that in itself is enlightenment. And that's why I want to say it in the beginning.
And that'll help determine whether you do a porn site or not.
You do me move.
You know, you may have the most enlightening.
That's what I'm saying. There might
site.
be some erotica that's okay. I'd have to see what you're talking about. I don't, you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm talking about, no, I'm not.
I know you're going to.
Next time I'll make sure there's nobody in that generation.
You asked that question?
Oh. That would be something. And that's another thing. That's the word fornication. That's pornography. That's where we get the word pornography from in the Greek. Fornication. Fornication has nothing to do with intimacy outside of marriage. Fornication has everything to do with voyeur, any sexual act. It's any sexual act.
You fornicated.
Yeah. Next week, Shelby, you're about to